So, I want to talk about virtue signaling, specifically virtue signaling on social media, and why it's probably one of the most embarrassing things that a person can do when you look at it from the perspective of somebody who really digs down deep and really looks beneath the surface as to what virtue signaling actually is. Now, first, I'm going to describe to you what the definition of virtue signaling is. It's something we see sometimes on social media. Specifically, we see it a lot on Twitter and Reddit, sometimes on Facebook, but mostly it's on Twitter. And virtue signaling is basically when somebody on the internet or a group of people judge somebody else whom they don't know because of a particular action that they did, whether it be a long time ago or whether it be recently. And they basically make the statement to sort of tell the world that this person is, quote, doing something bad, right? Whether it be something that's actually bad or something they perceive as bad. It's sort of like they're calling out someone else's behavior for being bad. And when you really think about it, and I've done this before until I realized what I was actually doing. Now, I've never done it to the degree of like how some of these so-called SJWs and these people who are like basically, as they say, what's the phrase I learned this year? Terminally online. These people do this so they can gain likes off of mooching off of somebody else, so that these likes become like a dopamine hit. We're going to get to more on that here in a minute, but virtue signaling basically is that. So if you see somebody doing something online, let's just say that they make an inappropriate joke. Doesn't matter. Could be anything. Then you sit there and you say, you quote tweet them or you screenshot it, and you want to make sure that your audience knows that this is very, very bad. This is very bad, guys. This is very bad behavior. Sometimes people have done some insane amounts of virtue signaling. Like, for example, the people who are against, investing or against crypto, and they're so against crypto that their entire profile is like anti-crypto. I understand being careful with crypto because I've made multiple speakdoms on people really researching crypto before jumping into anything, because a lot of folks don't do that, but that's different. I have no problem with crypto. I own some crypto, but the issue is there's people who sort of have this weird idea that their tweet is somehow going to change things when it won't. And virtue signaling is often used when it comes to these online fake activists. Some have been called the woke activists, but I'm not going to go that far. But what they are is they're these people who spend all day complaining about someone else's behavior, and they find new targets every week or every month or every few weeks to quote unquote call out to make sure that others who are like-minded see it, and that's a way for them to make new friends and have more engagement. And a lot of the virtue signal, a lot of this type of behavior is actually much more internal than it is external, because when you break down what virtue signaling is, it's oftentimes a logical fallacy, or more often than not, a massive, gigantic turd of hypocrisy. So when people virtue signal, what they're basically saying is they are saying that somebody else is doing something they consider bad, somebody who they don't know, because if they did know them, if they were actually friends, they would reach out to them privately and say, hey, dude, I don't agree with this. Are you sure this is the right move? Is this how you really feel? That's what friends and family do who care about each other. They reach out privately. But instead what they do is they virtue signal, because to them, getting brownie points from like-minded people is more valuable than actually maintaining a real friendship. When you break down virtue signaling, it's one of the weakest things that people do. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because virtue signaling is basically a person who has a loser mentality, who is lonely, who is trying to get fake internet validation, who somehow takes retweets and likes as having some kind of real world value, which I hate to break it to you, but tweets retweets and likes have absolutely zero value in the real world. Now, if Elon Musk changes Twitter so you can monetize that, different story. It's going to go crazy if that happens. But people don't care about it being an important value because to them it's valuable. So I look at them and I'm like, how sad do you have to be and how hypocritical do you have to be to virtue signal, to make this tweet disparaging somebody who you don't know just to make yourself look like you have this invisible moral high ground? First of all, when it comes to morality, that's a very subjective topic. There are some things that I feel like across the board are bad. Murder, anything involving children, any kind of sexual assault, actual real world sexual assault, not like internet stuff, like, things like that. Those are things that are genuinely bad. And most people will recognize that as being bad. Racism, things of that nature, real racism. However, one of the things that I always find interesting is the people who virtue signal the most are the ones that have the most to hide. Oftentimes they don't have many photos of themselves, or they don't get on camera, or they hide behind an avatar. They don't really, they're anonymous because they're safe behind that anonymous fake screen name. But let's say that somebody virtue signals and says, "Oh, you made an inappropriate joke. That joke is inappropriate." Or, "Oh my gosh, this movie is very offensive." Or, first of all, there's two questions. Number one, are you really that mad? Are you actually upset? Are you actually feeling a negative emotion from something somebody else said? Okay, I'll buy it. Maybe sometimes they are. I don't think that's the case all the time. Number two, so you're telling me you've never made an inappropriate joke in your life or said something inappropriate? It's such hypocritical shit. It's no different than people who would watch the news years ago when our parents were watching the 8 o'clock news or 11 o'clock news, and they would hear a story about somebody robbing somebody else or, committing a crime and judge them and say, "Man, that guy's a scumbag." Meanwhile, they commit crimes every day. They run red lights, they steal. People are really, really hypocritical. And they always have been. And virtue signaling is the new sort of major hypocrisy here. It is a very easy and very cowardly way to try to get new friends and to try to win the popularity contest. Because if you really felt as strongly as you claim you do over the internet, when I say you, I don't mean you guys, I mean like people who do this. If you really feel as strongly about a certain politician or a certain political party or a certain, actor or musician, if you actually really feel that inclined, why don't you actually do something in the real world about it? Are you actually going to go out and protest? Are you going to actually go write letters to your congressman? Are you going to actually come up with some kind of grassroots campaign? Or are you going to bitch about it on Twitter? 99% of the time, it's the last answer. They never do anything that actually makes a difference. They never do. There's people on Twitter who say things like, we have to protect women, which is supposed to be this sort of anti-sexist way, but when you break that down, it's actually more sexist when you really break it down. But we're not going to do that right now. Oftentimes people type like this because they want to create this fake moral, this fake high horse, this very snobby, snooty, fake high horse to make themselves feel better and overcome their own shortcomings because they don't look at themselves in the mirror and point out their maladaptive problems. Instead, they're pointing out everybody else's. Human beings have always done this, but what makes virtue signaling extra bad now is that there are so many people doing it that they create these communities, these friend groups, and they become these people who are actively trying to be mad at something. You could wake up every day and go on social media. Every single day, someone's going to be mad about something. Every day. I'll never forget the day after Christmas, I went on Twitter and I expected people to show photos of their presents, to show photos of how happy Christmas was with the family. What did I see? a bunch of kids bitching about Dokkan. Now, again, I'm in the Dragon Ball community, so I'm going to see mostly stuff like that. So if you're not in that community, fine. But I'm telling you, it's just funny how you think, okay, well, I'm going to behave like this. And then you realize that others don't behave like you. They just don't. Instead, they need to create this false, virtuous, totally moral, social justice warrior on social media who's going to make a difference by calling people out. It's call out culture. When that same person, I'll give you an example. I was called out once by somebody for using the word virgin as an insult. This same person that called me out has used the N-word with the hard ER to me privately. I did not make it public. You want to know why? Because A, that person would have been so harassed, they would have probably left Twitter. And some of you are probably saying, fuck it, you should have done it. I know some of y'all are saying that, especially my black friends. I know a lot of you guys are like, fuck that shit. I feel you. And two, it just really shows the hypocrisy. It really shows that you can sit there and be a certain type of way on the internet, but behind the scenes, you don't ever stick up. If people actually followed the values they claim that they always have, the world would be a totally different place. We'd have a bunch of Mother Teresa's running around. But here's the thing. It's fake. It's fake anger. It's fake emotion. It's not even really like, most of the time I'm saying, it's not even really any way to solidify a purpose except to bring more like-minded people in an attempt to go viral to come to you and make new quote-unquote friends and become quote-unquote popular when in reality you're not even popular because internet popularity has no reflection on the real world unless you are turning it into a business, as I have. Otherwise, all you're getting is validation from people who don't know you, who don't know the real you, who are also hiding their real selves. Social media is one big fucking lie. And people who virtue signal the loudest are the ones that usually have the most to hide. I'll never forget, man, I've had people say things about me that they themselves have done in front of me. I've even seen people do something inappropriate, then say I did it within the same, day. Talk about not having self-awareness, yo. Talk about having the mind of an underdeveloped brain and the mind of a child. That's how people are. And so it's a daily thing now, and I would love to make a video saying it has got to stop, but it's probably never going to. However, if you are somebody who does this, think real hard about this. People on the internet who like your tweet and who follow you are not your friends. As of this recording, I have 95 or 99,000 Twitter followers, almost 100,000. Do you think those people are actually my friends? Some of them are. Yes, of course. But all of them? So do you think that I sit back here and I look at the likes on a tweet and I'm like, yeah, look at those likes. Look at me. Look how popular I am. That's never been me, bro. It's never. Well, that's not true. That was me when I was younger, not so much now. Because unless I can monetize it, there's no real tangible value in being too popular on Twitter because Twitter forgets about you in about a week. Literally, that's how it is, and I've seen it so many times. And they think that this virtue signaling accomplishes something when all it does is it gives them a dopamine hit, a fake dopamine hit, and makes them feel like they are powerful, which they're not. They're cowards. Makes them feel like they're important, and it hides their own. It hides their own insecurities and their own flaws. If you can point the finger at somebody else's flaws, you oftentimes are rarely, if ever, responsible for your own flaws. You know how they say things like, don't point fingers if you have three pointing back at you? That's very real in situations like this. I've seen it. So I have seen people who I used to be friends with virtue signal, and I know for a fact that what they're saying is not how they behave behind the scenes. Multiple people. And that's when I realized how fake everything is. So what I want y'all to do is kind of break out of this social media matrix, if you're in it. Break out of it and really look at people's actions and really realize that getting a bunch of likes or getting any kind of engagement is fake validation. Same thing with Instagram. Girls will upload pictures of themselves with like a bunch of filters and have like 15,000 views, or I'm sorry, 15,000 likes, whatever. And they'll all of a sudden think that they're pretty. But it's fake because you're putting a bunch of filters and makeup on. In the real world, you don't look like that. A lot of people do this, guys and gals. I'm sure you know this by now. So what good is it to have people like the fake you? I'll tell you what it is. Because the real you isn't very well liked. There's something missing in your life. You're not getting validation from your parents, your siblings, your peers, your spouse. You're not getting that. So you have to go to the internet to get validation. That is a problem right there. Unfortunately, the more time goes by, this generation of people growing up now, this Gen Z or whatever, it's getting worse for them because now they're really caught up in it. Now they really think, oh, look at that. I got 25,000 likes on Instagram. I must be really hot, or I must be this. And even if you are hot, what kind of value do you have to bring to the world? Because here's the problem. Here's the reality check. Okay, let's say a girl's hot on Instagram. Let's wait 60 years. Is she still going to be hot? So what do those feelings really mean in 60 years? You got to think about the future like that, you know? Getting this momentary dopamine hit, it becomes an addiction. It literally is social media is very addicting. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of it. Snapchat, very, very unhealthily addicting because it makes people think that they're actually grander than they actually are, and it makes people feel like they're loved. But when the time comes for you actually needing a friend to love you, you ain't gonna have nobody but those internet clowns that you called your friends. And so I'm telling you this as somebody who has seen this a lot, and many of you have too. If you virtue signal, dude, it's the biggest possible brand of hypocrisy, because I don't know how many of you guys follow the Bible. Even if you're not a Christian or even if you're not a religious person, that's irrelevant. There is a line in the Bible that nobody ever talks. I mean, people talk about it, but nobody ever follows it. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Am I going to sit there and judge somebody else without judging myself? I've done it before. We all have. But the older I get, the more I realize that it's extremely hypocritical and it's extremely toxic. And people in the Far East figured this out centuries ago. It's not the right way to live. It's all ego-based. It's all, look at me, I'm wonderful. Look at them, they're bad. That's what that is, yo. Do not become one of these people, dude, because if you get caught up in that worldview of these people, you're going to end up being losers just like they are, because they would rather get fake validation than go out there and earn real validation by going to the gym, by starting a business, by accruing wealth, by becoming a brand or becoming famous. Would you rather have Justin Bieber money, or would you rather have 100 grand in the bank or 100,000 likes on Twitter? See what I'm saying? But they don't view it like that. They're not focused on their purpose. I want all of you to be, and stay focused on what you really want to do with your life, instead of getting caught up on, hey, this person who I don't know liked me. Hey, look, I'm impressing people who I don't know and will probably never meet. It's very unhealthy.